Looks like we're live, Tim. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you definitely.
Great, great. So, welcome everybody to Bourbon and Blockchain's Happy Hour. We're super excited to feature Shire Distillery. Tim, the Master Distiller and co-founder. Man, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Definitely. I appreciate you having me on. Excited to see what this event holds and yeah, kind of chop through some whiskey discussion, change it up a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
man. Hey, actually, Tim came to us. We didn't seek Tim out. Tim actually found his way into our Discord. So, Tim, can you kind of explain how you found your way in? Because I think that was actually a question that came up in the community the other day.
yeah, I was looking the other day. I think it was roughly January this year that I had joined the Discord. And, you know, I forget how exactly I caught wind of it. I think it was from another Discord I was in. But someone was talking about it, and I was like, bourbon and blockchain. Well, those are two things I like. So, right when I came across it, it was a no brainer. I had to go check it out, and I kind of when I'm in Discords, whenever I'm in them, I'll sit in the background, just kind of skim through stuff and do some reading and research and whatnot. But yeah, now I guess I'm becoming a little more active in the Discord scene.
That's awesome, man. No, we're glad to have you, and we're glad that you brought up to us that we could do more. And you're absolutely right. You said it. You brought it up. You're like, have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? And that's what really got us really thinking as a team. Like, okay, he's right. How could we bring bourbon, like real life bourbon, to the club and to members, right? And so it's kind of led us to this point now. But we do have one comment. Leo says sweet logo. So we have some people that are liking it. In fact, if before we logged in, everybody just saw your guys' logo. So tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about Shire, and I'd like you to tell just a little bit about your history and how you got to where you guys are now.
Yeah, definitely. I can give some background on the distillery, how it started out, and hopefully I don't bore you all to death and make it too long and drawn out. Because I know I'm sure you can tell from when we met like a week or two ago, I can just talk on and on and on about stuff.
Hey,
But
it's been 3 weeks
yeah,
now. Time flies.
okay, yeah, no, it definitely does. These last several weeks have been extra busy. Like I was telling you, this past weekend I was out of town. I went and actually it wasn't work related. I went and did an Ironman, and oh man, every second of that I was just regretting it.
Yeah, when you
The
said
whiskey
that to me,
business.
I was like, "You do Ironmans? Are you crazy? Bourbon and
Yeah, the
Ironmans
whiskey
don't go
business
together."
and massive quantities of like endurance exercise don't really go together well. I guess I found that out the hard way. But yeah, so about the distillery, we were established 2017. We are family owned and operated. It was me, my father, and my mother that started this business out. A lot of folks ask us what got us into this road, and I guess the simple answer would be beer making. For probably about 10 plus years, I've been making my own beer on a hobby level, just, small batches, 5, 10 gallon batches, built my own kegerator, have beer on draft at the house, just make
Oh
for a fun
yes.
time. But my dad, he's been doing beer for a little over 20 years and also mead and wine. Really, we were both doing just about any type of alcohol except for distilled spirits. But then one day, there was a guy in our beer group that I came across him, and he was a cool guy. He not only did he make beer, he made vodka, he made whiskey, all types of backyard hooch, and that's what really got the gears turning. So, right away, I come from an automation background, and right away, I started thinking about how to implement automation into the distilling world, and really, it was all a thought process on a hobby level. It was never with any intentions of going commercial, anything like that. But I guess one thing just kind of kept leading to another, and at this point, I'm working oil and gas. I was with Occidental Petroleum for roughly 4 or 5 years, give or take, and You can kind of see how I got like a dual monitor set up here. Well,
Hmm.
at work, I had my dual monitor set up, and on one of them, I'm doing my busy work. Hopefully, there's no Oxy employees out there because, but yeah,
None that I
doing my
know of.
work on one screen, and the other one, I'm looking at distillery equipment. I'm trying to find everything I need to build a hobby level, just a small automated still. And I want it to be process controlled, where I could just put temperature set points and just a very very neat, fun little project. I was looking to challenge myself, I guess. But while I'm looking for parts to build this little piece of equipment, I come across a guy selling an entire distillery, and that's what really got the ball rolling. The very next day, me and my pops, we went out there. We checked out his distillery, and he showed us all the ins and outs, every bit of the process. So after that, me and my dad, we started thinking like, I don't know if we really want to ride off of this guy's dream that he's given up on, but we are intrigued and we do want to start a distillery. So from that point forward, I mean, we started doing what we needed to do. We sourced out a 50-gallon all copper still. I wish I had photos of it on my computer. I don't, unfortunately. But if you come to the distillery,
I took a picture of it. I'll share it in the Discord. While I was there,
cool, yeah.
I took a picture of it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe some of the things I talk about, you might be able to later on just kind of like throw some of them in there and let folks kind of, it'll help put a visual to the story. But also,
sure. While you're talking, I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, y'all are all more than welcome if you ever want to come out and actually visit the distillery in person as well. We're located in Brookshire, Texas, which is just west of Houston. So right on the outskirts. We basically consider ourselves Houston. But yeah, so we got a 50-gallon still, little backwoods looking, all copper, like some moonshine looking stuff that you'd see in the hills. And
they're
that's
about, to see it.
Yeah, that's what we started running operations on. And as a commercial distillery, we got our DSP, which is our distiller's permit, ran operations on a 50-gallon still. And that only went on for, I'd say, a very short period of time, because very early on, we had in Texas, one of the major liquor stores is called Specs. And we had Specs pick us up statewide. So when they picked up our brand, started carrying some of our early products, it's very hard to keep product on shelves with a 50-gallon still. So that's kind of where we made the decision to upgrade. It became a museum piece to us. It just sits off in the background. I guess y'all might be seeing a picture of it in a little bit. But yeah, now we run operations on a 600-gallon still house. It's we got a 600-gallon fermenter. Or, well, I guess I'll go in order. I'll start. We have a mash tun. Then we got 2 fermenters. And then we have a 600-gallon still, which is the still is where the magic happens, where you're actually distilling that fermented mash. You basically make a big old beer, and then you separate the alcohol, and you have less volume, but it's more concentrated. And that's I guess a very simple description of distillation. But
yeah,
like very
hey, one thing that you brought up, Tim, when we visited, that kind of blew my mind. Tell everybody how much grain it takes to produce even just a few barrels of whiskey or bourbon.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, yeah, what you start out with and what you end up with as final product it's 2 very different numbers. So I'll use my equipment for example. All my vessels are 600-gallon tanks. If I were to use that to make a wine or a beer, I make a 600-gallon batch, I mash it, and I ferment it. I have 600 gallons of final product. In the distilling world, I'll start out with a 600-gallon batch, which requires roughly 1,300 pounds of grain, and then the rest of it will be water. You mix them together, think of it kind of like you're making a big bowl of oatmeal, and then after that, you're going to ferment it. When you ferment, that's when the alcohol is created. So we'll get roughly 10% alcohol in a 600-gallon batch. So for your numbers, that's, we'll have roughly 50 to 60 gallons of alcohol in there. That's usable alcohol. If we take that entire 600-gallon batch and we distill it, we're separating the alcohol portion from all that water and all that grain. We want to leave all that behind, and we want to collect a nice, clear spirit. And whenever you make a distilled spirit, kind of like this vodka right here, or well, this is vodka. I'll show you a white whiskey. When you make a distilled spirit, even if it's a whiskey, they start out clear. They look just like a vodka. So this is our Shire. Let me see. Yeah, you can see that's our Shine right there. That is a white whiskey. That's what it looks like when it comes off your distillation equipment. And so when we mash 1,300 pounds of grain and we ferment it and then distill it, we get roughly one 53-gallon barrel worth of product from that entire 600-gallon batch. So we go from 600 gallons all the way down to one standard size barrel, 53 gallons.
Those are all crazy.
Yeah. It definitely is, man. There's a lot of work that goes into such a small yield. But I guess that's just one more thing that makes it challenging and fun.
Yep.
I hear you pouring something there. What you got going in that glass?
Well, I don't have any of your Percherons, so I showed it last night in the Discord. My wife picked us up some Eagle Rare, surprised me with it. So
that's an awesome.
You got quite the collection too. Yep.
Yeah, I'd say this is just a portion of it. Yeah, when you're in the distilling world, I mean, these are some of my bottles that I have at home. I kind of lined out some of the Shire products so y'all can see them, and if I need to hold them up to the camera for y'all to see them as well. But yeah, I got a few bottles here, and then majority of the bottles they're typically at the distillery. We have our R&D shelves where we can have quite a few bottles up there, and if we're ever targeting a certain flavor profile, say we're making a rye whiskey or most recent a 4-grain. Well, it's also a neat thing to have other distilleries' products, 4 grains, ryes, whatever it might be, and to sample them, try them, look at their age statements, and kind of see what flavor profile you might be expecting from a 3 or a 4 or a 5 year. And so having a lot of different bottles on hand really, I guess, helps you do the R&D process for narrowing in on that flavor profile that you're targeting.
Yep. No, it's all really. You kind of went through the whole process with me, and I was kind of mind blown. Right? We all sit back and we relax and we enjoy a glass of whatever our favorite liquor or spirit is. But most people don't give a whole lot of thought what goes into making it. And when you actually see it being made, and you see what it takes, and you see somebody like yourself that's like super passionate about it, right? Like our group. I can speak for myself, Jen, Draco, and Grant. Crypto has been such a big part of our lives over the past few years that, it's one of our passions. And then this is just something that we love to share, right? When it comes to bourbon and liquor. And then speaking with you, it's so obvious that like, this is your passion. Like this is what you were meant to do. And after tasting some of your stuff, it was a clear match made in heaven from our part. When I talked to the guys about our visit and about the products that you had, everybody was super excited about what kind of possibilities we could be looking at in the future. So one of the things I'd like you to talk about, if you'll take a moment, is to maybe highlight the bourbon that I got to try, the barrel strength Percheron that you that won the most recent award. And can you explain that a little bit to everybody? I know you got a bottle behind you, so you can show it too.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the bottle you're talking about, let me show it to everybody. Get it up there in the camera. I'll try and hold it steady for y'all. I don't know if it's clear or not, but that's Percheron cast strength. It came in, it's very hard to see, but at 122.2 proof. This we actually did in collaboration. You can see the gold sticker. It's with the Texas Whiskey Trail. And then we do some extra labeling on the side here. So, of course, my personal bottle, I decided to pull bottle number 69 from inventory and, take it for my home bottle. And let's see, am I turning that the right way? There we go.
Yep.
And so yeah, this is a batch number 1. You get my little signature on there too. Well, you would if we still had any left, but there'll be another batch going out sometime in the near future. But this is a French oak finished bourbon.
Yeah,
And
that's one of the
yeah,
ones that, just speaking candidly to the group, that I think our group would love. Like that's something that we would love to be able to give back to everybody that participates in this in some form or fashion. So, I don't know what it takes. Me and you kind of talked about it while we were there, right? But I don't know what it's going to take for me to get you to like maybe put a Bourbon-n-Blockchain sticker on it so that nobody touches it, so that we get to try it first and taste it as a community.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, we figure something out that works for everybody. But
Yeah.
that product there, it just to kind of, I guess, show how many bottles you can get. That is a cask strength whiskey, and what that, or cask strength, barrel strength. There's people say it different ways, but what that means is that 53-gallon barrel was filled up with what I showed y'all earlier. You fill it up with a white whiskey. That white whiskey over time is going to change. It's going to mellow out. It's going to change in color, change in flavor profile. It's going to become a more complex, a much more matured product. And for that Percheron cask strength, believe it or not, that dark color that we have on this, it might be hard to tell. It looks like we got some coffee in there or something. It is a very
It's
dark
dark.
whiskey. Yeah,
Yep.
and that is all thanks to the Texas climate. We can basically, in a matter of one day, have all 4 seasons, and we're damn near going through that right now. In the
No, you're
morning
right.
today, it was 45 degrees, and then I'm wearing a thick jacket, and then middle of the day when I'm working on stuff up at the distillery, I'm sweating my ass off. I'm down in a t-shirt and shorts, and for us as humans that can be frustrating, but for whiskey in a barrel, it works wonders. It causes the whiskey to do this natural convection where it'll expand inside the barrel. And think of all that oak. Think of it as like a giant sponge. So when that whiskey expands from the heat during the day, it's going to get pushed into the pores of the oak, and the oak is going to soak up a lot of that whiskey. Now at nighttime, when it cools off, that whiskey contracts. It goes back into the middle of the barrel. It gets pulled in, and every time that happens, day in and day out, it's bringing more flavor, more color. It's creating a more complex product. Here in Texas, we were able to obtain that dark color, and that product there, that was I think 29 months old, so roughly 2 years and 5 months,
Wow.
roughly 2.5 years, and we have one very dark whiskey that is probably more similar along the lines of maybe an 8-year bourbon from like where a lot of your bourbon comes from, Kentucky.
Hmm.
But we got a cheat sheet. We got a time machine down here, or the next best thing. And so, yeah, that's a very neat product, though. We established a very dark, very neat, flavorful product in a 2.5-year span. And that's the first bourbon that we've submitted to any form of competition. And it was actually to the Texas Whiskey Festival competition, where you had all your top whiskey distilleries from all across the entire state of Texas, all sending in their whiskeys to this.
Hmm.
There's multiple categories. You got a malt whiskey category, a rye whiskey, all these different ones. But the most difficult category of all is your grain to glass bourbon. And this is what we sent to the grain to glass bourbon category. That's where all your big dogs, they keep winning that one. Some of them are like, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Garrison Brothers or
Oh,
Balcones.
yes.
Those are your two oldest and most well-known whiskey distilleries in Texas. Well, they're usually taking home first, second, or third, or gold, silver, and bronze in that grain to glass bourbon category. But our first year submitting one and being in the festival, we took home silver. It wasn't gold, but we did get a silver. We were able to knock down
That's
some of the big
awesome.
dogs
You
in a
guys are
very.
such a young brand. That's a huge accomplishment, man.
We are, yeah. It was very exciting, and it sparked a lot of exposure and demand for our products shortly after that. And I think I was telling you about the largest whiskey channel in the world, the Whiskey Tribe or the Whiskey Vault, I
Yep.
think it is. after they did a review of that product, we started having distilleries from across the world. We had folks that worked at some of the oldest distilleries in Scotland hitting us up and asking if that product is distributed in Scotland because they're wanting to get their hands on it. And I mean, we had to tell them like, sorry, we only harvested one barrel, and from that one barrel, we only got 192 bottles.
Yeah,
So
that
that
makes
is
it pretty
something that,
rare.
yeah, yeah, there's not a lot of it. We'll be doing future batches, but that kind of just goes to show how much whiskey you can get from a barrel too. If you leave it at cask strength, which means you put it in the barrel at a very high strength, and then when you harvest the whiskey from that barrel, you can do two things with it. You can leave it as a cask strength product, which means you leave it at a very high proof. Typically, it can be, to be classified as a bourbon, it has to go in the barrel no higher than 125 proof. So we'll typically barrel our whiskeys between 115 to 125, anywhere in that range. And when you take it out, it's going to, over several years of aging, that proof is going to change. It might go up a little bit, it might go down a little bit. Your climate plays a very big role in how that whiskey will interact. But
Yeah.
when you take it out, it's at a high proof, and then you can either leave it at that, which is cask strength, or you can add water to it and do what's called proofing it down. When you proof down your product, that's when you end up with probably more whiskeys like what a lot of folks are more familiar with. I guess the general public, like
Yeah.
something that's 40. Yep. Do it.
95% of the time when you walk into the liquor store anywhere, you're not buying cask strength stuff. I mean, cask strength is it's where the big dogs sit, right? And
Yeah,
there's a whole lot of reasons behind that, right? I mean, like 120 plus proof is pretty dangerous, especially if that's your only go-to on a regular basis.
for sure.
But also you don't yield as much, right? Like you said, essentially what you do to, like a lot of the bourbons that you go out, you'll see 45 proof. All of them are like 45, 46 proof or something. So what is that? Or no, I'm sorry,
ABV, you mean,
90.
but yeah, so like 40 to
I'm drinking,
45
I'm mixing it up.
ABV. Yeah, which will be like 80 to 90 proof is, I'd say that's a very common range where a lot of your, say like your standard your white label Jim Beam, a lot of your Jack Daniels, stuff like that, they're going to be somewhere between your 40 and 45, maybe 50% alcohol range. And that's what most people are just typically used to and exposed to. That's what a lot of those are, what are more heavily marketed. And it's an easy, well, I wouldn't say easy, but it's an easier drinking whiskey, and it'll be more palatable for most folks. But once you start entering the realm of cask strengths, they're a lot stronger. But the reward is you have a much stronger flavor profile as well. So if I had a cask strength whiskey, just added water to it and diluted it from 120 proof down to 80 proof, all I did was create a proof down whiskey, which is more like, let me see. So we also, you can see this is Percheron as well, but you notice the label is different. It is inverted. The colors are just, opposite of the other bottle. This is a proof down version of our Percheron. This one, it's 92 proof, so 46% alcohol. And then the cask strength version, there you go. Same name, different looking label, cask strength, 122.2 proof, which 61.1% alcohol. Cask strength is a lot stronger, a lot more flavorful, and your proof down product, you're going to have more water in there, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you might just, you might want an easier sipping whiskey, but other times you might want something with a lot of flavor, a lot of color, and a lot of aroma, just something that'll kick real hard.
Yeah. So let's talk just briefly about maybe the future for Shire Distillery. And you guys are a young brand, but obviously you've been making waves, right? I saw that your product's being sold in all the major stores for sure. Like you said, Specs. I also saw Total Wine. Is that correct? And
Yes. So
for those that
Total
don't know,
Wine,
Total Wine's a big outfit here in the state of Texas. And it's a pretty amazing store, to be honest.
Yeah, Total Wine's pretty badass. So you would
Yeah.
think by the name it's just a bunch of wine, which it is, but they have a shitload of spirits too,
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh, there is
Yeah.
so much. I was stupefied. I walked in for the very first time and I was amazed. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like a kid in a candy shop, but I couldn't afford everything that I wanted to. Right?
I know that's the crazy part, man. Before you know it, you can have several $100s worth in your cart, and you're like, oh man, this is
Easy.
ridiculous. That's why I did well, what all common sense would say, and I just started making my own.
Yep, that makes good sense to me. I mean, you got to have a lot of patience, though, right? I mean, this stuff isn't created overnight. You're not from once you put that in that barrel, you're pretty much committed for a few years.
Yeah. Now it's the waiting game. You focus on something else. It's if you got ADD, it can make the distilling world very, very difficult. But so, like for example, when I was in school, I was never good at taking notes, stuff like that. I just didn't care for it. But in this business, I find myself having to take notes of everything. When I have a mashing day, my fermentation, my distillation days, whatever it might be, I have to take notes on ambient temperature, the temperature of the liquids. I mean, I'm just recording so much information because that product that I'm creating, I'm not going to revisit it for several years down the road. And so if something, goes off, say it just turns out being one of the best products I've ever had, or something just ends up spoiling with the batch and it turns out horrible, anything, I need to be able to reference to notes from several years back and figure out what was done different in the process to contribute to this. So
So you're
yeah,
the
it's
Walter White of the whiskey world.
yeah, I guess we could say that.
Yeah, I saw your notebook while we were there. It's pretty impressive. I can understand why that's super important because if you just happen to come across a breakthrough, right? Something that's like revolutionary, you taste it and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like it's the best thing that I've ever created. Obviously, you want to have the ability to recreate. So it totally makes sense to me to keep like just really good notes, just like any good chemist or lab technician or anybody would, because that's essentially what you're doing, right? There's a
Yeah,
technique
definitely.
to
I
it.
mean,
There's a definitely skill to it. It's not something just anybody can create an incredible product.
when I look at a distillery, what I think of is like a laboratory and a kitchen came together, and I feel like that's a pretty accurate description of what you do in a distillery. I mean, it's still you're creating a consumable product. There's so many different variances in your recipe, whether what yeast you're using, where your grain comes from, your oak, whether it's American oak, Hungarian, French. I mean, you got so many different types of oak, your climate that you're aging your product in. There's just so many variables to the entire process. So it's yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, I guess that's more like the cooking side of it, and then of course when you're just all the science behind it, that's more of your laboratory side.
That's right.
It's
I
boiling
was pretty
points.
amazed. I just never realized it when you pulled out that magic tool to where you could thief that white whiskey for me, and you showed me that it was like 144 proof, and then I took a sip of it.
Yeah,
Like I was thinking, like this is magic. This isn't something that happens every day, right? Like what are you doing with this? So
yeah,
it pretty interesting, man. I don't think really people understand or appreciate genuinely how this stuff is created and how much like care you guys put into making this stuff. I think like
hey, I think I might have lost you. Or can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you cut out or I did, or I'm not sure what
Yes,
happened, but
it could be
seems
me.
good now.
But yeah, I think it's super exciting for me just to think like here's a group right coming together. Really, our ultimate goal with Bourbon and Blockchains was to provide people with like a realistic, safe haven avenue to in to purchase these NFTs, and these NFTs can benefit you through a real yield, right? There's no Ponzi to it. And so we put so much effort and thought into this, and then you reached out and we met you, and then we had the opportunity to talk through like some possibilities that we hadn't really even given any thought to. And I was like, what's more exciting than, as a community coming together, being able to share a bottle of bourbon created by Shire Distillery, somebody that we all get to know, that's within our Discord. Right now, I'm sure you're fully aware, Tim, that the market is not doing well. Many people have retreated. They're hiding under rocks, right? Like just trying to avoid the bear market at all costs.
That's where I come in, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exactly my thought. I was like, hey, you know what? Market. Well, number one, the bear market is the perfect time to launch a project like this, right? It absolutely is. We're buying at a discount compared to what we were just several months ago. Even just a few weeks ago, things are still at a discount, right? And so, like, it's a good time to start something like this, but at the same time, it's not an exciting time. So what brings more excitement than being able to share a glass of whiskey, bourbon, vodka, whatever your thing is, with the community? And I think that, like, this is the connection point that we're most excited about. Of everything we're talking about, like, we feel confident in the investment side of things. Like, we have things handled, and we have things planned out. We're bringing in the right knowledge. But the thing that gets us the most excited is, like, connecting that real world aspect. So it's like everybody could be sitting here in the future, all sharing a bottle of Percheron while we're chatting about whatever we want to chat about, an update on the project, talk about a new product that Shire's coming out with. Like, the opportunities are truly endless. So, like, this is, like, super exciting for all of us. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's awesome. It kind of opens a whole other realm to, just kind of take it out from being just, I guess, it's the other half of the name now, rather than just being 100% focused around, just the digital world. We're kind of bringing something tangible in your hands into it as well.
That's right.
We need to do things in the future, like a virtual toast. Everyone has some whiskey, whether it's Shire products or whatever product you have on your shelf. We all sit down and kind of just drink a spirit. Doesn't even have to be a whiskey, and have a good time and talk about things.
That's it.
Bringing a human aspect of things.
I think that's what we're missing out on in a lot of this, right? All these investments people have made. Well, number one, a lot of them turned out to be Ponzi's. So, of course, people disappeared, right? But for the real life projects, if you can connect the community in a special way, then I think it just brings everybody closer, stronger. And what better way than through a glass of whatever it is you enjoy? I'm on, like, glass number 3 now. So things could get dangerous, Tim. So
yeah, man, I think you've double lapped me now. I'm still on my first one. We both poured a glass of Eagle Rare, right, roughly around the same time. I'm still on
That's
mine,
right.
but you're hauling ass, man.
I'm sorry. I'm listening to you taking it in, but this is usually what happens. I just take it too far. Yeah. So me and Tim are both drinking Eagle Rare 10-year. Yours is the 10-year.
Yeah.
Yep. So, anyways, hey, I don't want to take too much more time. I do want to highlight for everybody, and Tim, this may be a surprise to you. We haven't got to catch up because you've kind of been traveling here lately, but we've been in discussions with another group that we're willing to talk about named Baxis. Okay, Baxis is a new Web3 project, but this is an individual. You can actually look it up. This individual has a bourbon, whiskey, distilled spirit vault. And I mean, he's well known. You can see his name's been behind many popular brands in the past. But this individual, he has created and is in the beta phases of this new project, and we're actually taking a look at it right now. But what he's done, Tim, is he's taken super valuable bottles of bourbon, whiskey, whatever it is, right? I'm talking like some special stuff, like $20,000 a bottle. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a $30 bottle too. It doesn't really matter. But he's taking that bottle and he's turning them into NFTs. And what that NFT is when somebody buys that NFT, they own that bottle. He's just holding it. Okay. He just has it because it's a collector bottle, right? Not everybody wants to keep a $20,000 bottle of whatever it is in their own house. I know I would be tempted to drink it, especially after 3 glasses of this stuff. So what he does is he turns them into NFT. He has the vault there. Anytime you want to claim it, all you have to do is contact them, submit your NFT to them, and they will ship it to your home, which is a really cool concept. But not only do they do that, but they can take potentially, say, a Shire branded barrel pick that we've done, and we could bottle it even at your facility, and we could have shipped to them. I think they're in Kentucky, I believe. And we could have it shipped to them, and then he could turn them all into NFTs. And then we can reward our members through a very highly discounted, obviously, there's shipping and there's complications sending even outside of the country. So all of that would need to be worked out. But I know that this individual already ships across the nation. And it just would be it's a cool idea if you think about it, right? To where we could potentially take, the barrel pick that the community chose, ship it to him after we bottled it, and then him turn your bottles of Percheron or whatever it is we choose into NFTs that we then reward members with, and then they can claim and have it shipped directly to their house, no matter where they live in the nation. Isn't that it? I mean, that's a pretty brilliant idea. Just who would have known that this even existed?
Yeah, no, that's really neat. I mean, it's taking things to the next level, I guess.
It is, man. Yeah. It is. As we've been exploring opportunities, Tim, like things have been becoming more clear. And actually, I have a few other ideas I don't want to share with the community quite yet, but I'll share with you here in a few days about how we could even do something additional with Shire that I think is really cool. But man, is there anything else you'd like to add today? I'm trying to be respectful of your time. We call this Bourbon-n-Blockchain happy hour, but we try not to do an hour because not many people want to stick around and watch this for an hour.
Yeah, no, hey man, I'm good. My schedule's open, so we can hang out and talk all night, or we can cut loose, whichever works. But I know
I don't want people to see me cut loose. Oh yeah, there's a few.
But there's a few. Maybe if you're able to post some, I can kind of I can pop through and answer anything that folks.
Sure.
Okay.
So Kevin James, he's a great comedian, by the way. He asked us to talk about the different grains out there to choose from, like what grains make what.
I guess we'll start with bourbon. Your most common grain for bourbon is corn. You have several criteria that you have to follow for a product to even be called bourbon. So when we make any of our products and we create our labels, we can't just slap whatever we want on that label and throw it on store shelves and say, here you go. I mean, there's a process we have to go through. It can take upwards of 1 to 2 months for us to have labels approved. If we got the word if we got the word bourbon on there, it's one of the most protected distilled spirits in the entire world. So we have to submit labels and get approval from TABC, TTB, state, federal government. We have to get approvals before we can even start printing these labels and put it on store shelves. Bourbon, the majority grain for something to be classified as a bourbon, at least 51% of your grain has to be corn. You got a lot of different types of corn. It doesn't specify what type of corn. You got red corn, blue, different types of yellow and white corns. As long as 51% of that grain bill is corn, then that's one of the criteria you have to follow for it to be a bourbon. It also has to go into a new charred oak container. They say container, typically what's used is a barrel. But a lot of folks think, you can fill a barrel with whiskey, age it out, harvest that whiskey, and then now you got this empty barrel, you can put more whiskey in there again. You can do that, but you cannot call it a bourbon if you second use that barrel. They have to be new barrels, and majority of your grain has to be corn for it to be a bourbon. So that's one of your most common grains in the bourbon world. Now, if you're looking at say like a Scotch or malt whiskey, malted barley is what's your common grain. So I'd say for whiskeys in general, you got four common grains. You got corn, rye, barley, and wheat, and they all kind of do different things. So the whiskey making world is very similar to the bread making world. Think of it this way: you know how you got cornbread, you got rye bread, you got wheat bread. Well, you got a lot of these in the whiskey world too. So the corn will give you more of a like a sweet tasting whiskey. Rye will give you more of a spicy, like a peppery notes to your product. Wheat will give you a very like a very approachable, easy drinking, an earthy, like a mellow flavor profile. And then your malted barley, which is very common in the Scotch world, and malt is very common for like a lot of Japanese and Irish whiskeys as well. That what we typically use malt for is more so the enzyme activity that we get from it. It can give you a great flavor profile, but the enzymes from that malt, they're very critical in your process of making a bourbon to help break down the corn. You got to break down the corn because that corn has to you got to convert your starches into simple sugars, and then your simple sugars will eventually become your alcohol, and then you distill it, and that's where you're separating that alcohol. So that's probably kind of a long drawn out answer, but yeah, corn, rye, barley, and wheat are
And
your
then
most
all depending where you get those from, I'm sure it changes things too, right?
exactly. You got so many different variants of all those different grains. All the grains we use, we keep our product, Texas product. So our grains come from Texas. The mashing, fermentation, distillation, the entire process, it's all Texas done. So,
That's
but yeah,
awesome. That's awesome. We did have a question here, and this one's not necessarily for you, but it says, when will this be available outside of the US? It says, once you bottle, I believe aging stops similar to wine. Is there a proper way to keep the quality? Oh, there's a good question. No, number one, let me answer the first one. All right. So, product available out of the US or specifically Canada. I believe some of them are available outside of Canada. I'm not too familiar with how that would function, but I will tell you that the person that we've been speaking with Baxis can absolutely answer that. So I think that's something we might be able to answer here in the near future. But Tim, can you? I think me and you spoke about this when we visited at the distillery. So once you open a bottle, is there a proper way to keep it or to keep the quality once it's been opened?
yeah. You just gotta chug it right after you open it, and that's the best bet. Yeah. So I mean, whiskey. You are correct. It will stop aging in the bottle because it is no longer interacting with any form of oak. Not only is it not interacting with oak, but the glass does not breathe like a barrel does. So the whiskey is not going to go through the expansion and contraction and the normal aging process it would in a barrel. It won't do that inside of a glass bottle. So I guess when you open a bottle, it won't necessarily go bad by any means. Whiskey has such a high alcohol content; it'll stay good for a very long time. But what can start, I guess, changing the flavor profile of your whiskey, and which could be for better or worse. A little bit of changing and breathing can actually be good for a whiskey, but too much air. So I guess oxygen is what I'm getting at. Is when air gets into the bottle, air can be bad for it. So there's two ways this can happen. Let's uh let's just say this was my bottle right here, and that's how much whiskey I got in there.
Right.
This bottle, even if I have it capped, you got to think about it. This is all oxygen right here. All that air is actually going to change the flavor profile of this amount of whiskey. If your bottle is relatively full, say maybe 70% full or more, then there's not really a lot of room for air, so it's not going to alter your product much. It'll just maintain its flavor profile. It'll stay consistent. But one thing you would have to worry about is your cork. Nowadays, synthetic corks are becoming way more common, and a
Yeah.
synthetic cork is not going to dry out and allow oxygen into your bottle over time. But if you have a traditional cork, which is kind of like what a lot of wine bottles have. Actual cork over time will dry, and as it dries out, then it can actually start promoting air to get introduced to the product and change your flavor profile, and you could even have alcohol evaporate out. So I think that's a
Yeah.
big reason why a lot of wines are stored on their side. That's to
Yeah,
keep
that's what
your
I was getting at, was to do
yeah,
this, right? Because everybody
exactly.
says if you don't do it, it'll go bad. And I've experienced that myself. Was given a gift many years ago. It sat in the cabinet, wasn't turned on its side. You open it up, the cork falls apart, and the wine smells absolutely like crap. So, yeah, I've experienced it firsthand. So, no, that's great. We do have another question from Leo, it looks like. He says, if you have to age in barrels for possibly years, do you have a giant warehouse where you store them in?
Yeah, I mean, right now the area we're sitting on, we're housing close to 100 barrels that are filled with whiskey. But as time goes by and we continue distilling more and more, we will then accumulate more and more barrels of product. So right now we're looking to make a move happen in the near future. Not anywhere too far away, but we need more room. As you grow as a
Yep,
distillery, as you continue storing away barrels, they take up a lot of room.
they
So
do. And
yeah,
they
you
sit there
definitely
for a long time.
yeah, exactly. So you need more and more space to keep housing those all those filled barrels.
Yeah, and Leo, I've seen their warehouse. I've seen where they store them, and there's a lot. He says 100. I feel like there's more than that. So it looked like a whole lot more than that. But yeah, yeah, I could see why you guys have had to expand within that building so many times. It makes good sense to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we did have a question earlier too, and I don't know if it was a question. It was more of a comment about cinnamon whiskey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you guys have a cinnamon whiskey product as well.
Yeah, that we do. Let me show it to you.
Fireball fans.
Yeah, well, if you're a Fireball fan, you won't be for long because so I think it's focusing a little bit. This is
Yep, I can see it
35%
well.
alcohol, so 70 proof. We call it Shire Fire. This is our version of a cinnamon whiskey. So basically, the way we came up with the recipe was doing everything opposite of Fireball, except for making a cinnamon whiskey. Well, I guess we did that opposite of them too, because their product is not even a real whiskey. They're just starting out from like a neutral spirit. Think of more like a vodka, but not an 80 proof vodka. They're taking a very high proof vodka and then they're just proofing it down a little bit and flavoring it.
Hmm.
And so Fireball is not a legit whiskey. They brought it down. It's a liqueur. They're just adding artificial flavors and colors to it. There's a big following for it. It's a very popular cinnamon whiskey that they market very well.
Right.
But the way we do ours is really just everything opposite. We wanted to have something more clean, an actual whiskey. We wanted it to be all natural. So like one thing with Fireball is I believe they were even banned in Europe for a period of time because they had a chemical called propylene glycol, which is think of like a food grade antifreeze.
Mm,
They had that in their product as well, but we didn't want to have all this junk in there. We didn't want to have colorings and artificial flavorings and just all this crap. So we we start out from a true bourbon mash, which is our white whiskey. Once again, I'm going to show you all this bottle, the shine. Think of this as like the foundation of everything. You take this white whiskey that you make. If you can make a good white whiskey, then that's very critical. You take this, you barrel age it, you got a good bourbon. You take it and you flavor it, you got a good flavored whiskey. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cinnamon whiskey, but we take our bourbon mash, which is using three of the four most common grains. We're using corn, rye, and barley in that mash. We distill it out, and then we're putting all natural ingredients in there. We're getting cinnamon sticks from Indonesia. We're using a blend of three different red peppers, and then just a very tiny bit of sugar. So a lot of your cinnamon whiskeys or any of your flavored whiskeys, they load them down with sugar. They put so much sugar in there. It's almost like you're drinking like syrup out of the bottle,
Yeah,
and it almost looks like it too. It looks thick when it's coming out.
absolutely.
But yeah, and we didn't want ours to be all thick and syrupy and caked down with sugar. One thing with sugar, let's say this bottle here, if I was wanting to make the most cost-effective product possible, the more sugar I were to put in here, the less expensive ingredients I'm putting in here. Alcohol is an expensive ingredient. Cinnamon, all these other things cost a lot more than sugar does. So you load something down with sugar, all you're doing is replacing higher quality stuff with some cheap sweetener. And
Mm,
so we didn't want to load our product down with sugar. We want it to be all very clean, all natural. So we use Louisiana brown sugar, cinnamon sticks from Indonesia, and a blend of 3 different red peppers. That's it. Just natural spices, and then that white whiskey that I showed you. So it's a true bourbon mash white whiskey. Blend them all up together, and it creates our Shire Fire. So
yeah, I think Jen is sold. I think she's sold. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, man. A lot of us don't know the ins and outs. Fireball is popular. It's really awesome to see that you guys have your own rendition and have you explain how much cleaner it is at the end of the day. It's probably better for you, I would imagine, all around. Look, Jen's giving thumbs up. She said, "Yum."
But
And
Jen
Chris,
can only drink gin, right?
Jen's a vodka person. It just so
Vodka.
happens you guys do make a vodka as well.
Yeah, we do. Let me show it. There we go.
Shire Ice.
Shire Ice.
Yep.
Yep. So 80 proof, 40% alcohol, which is standard for a vodka. It's just a very nice, clean vodka. Yeah. Look, you can almost read the bottles in the background through it.
Oh yeah. That's most people's go-to. It's a safe bet. Not for me though. Some
Yeah.
dude said Texas local. We'll have to try some Shire.
Yeah, for
some
sure.
dude. If you
We're
have
in Texas.
if you have an opportunity, if you're in the Houston area, Brookshire, Texas, I think they only do tastings. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but on Saturdays, correct?
Correct. Saturdays from 12 to 6 is when we're open to the public. We focus more heavily on the manufacturing end of things. We like to produce a lot of whiskey and get it out on store shelves, and so we're always running operations. But we do like to give folks the option to or the ability to come out and see how these products are created and where they're coming from. So
Yeah.
every Saturday, 12 to 6, that's when we got the bar open where you can come out and visit. But anytime during the week, you can also just call the distillery and you can arrange something where, as long as we're expecting you, we'll be up there working operations, but you can swing by, check the place out, and, see what we got going on. We might be bottling, we might be cooking, there might be whiskey flowing off the still. If you show up at that's the right time to show up when it's flowing off the still. We pull a little sample from it, like you got to try. You got to try some of that 4-grain white whiskey, and it was over 140 proof, and that was some interesting stuff. That's several years down the road, so you got to try it right before it went in the barrel.
Oh man, yeah, that's a first experience for me too. But hey, I absolutely encourage everybody to reach out, support Shire. We're going to do the same. Tim's a great guy. He's instrumental to the vision that we have. And Tim, I really appreciate you coming on. I'll kind of leave it to you if you have anything else you'd like to add. I'm starting to drink way too much, and I'm going to get sloppy if I keep going. So I'll leave it to you if you have any parting words.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to doing more of these. There'll be times where there's so much to this whole bourbon world. I mean, there's no way it could all be covered in 30 minutes to an hour. So there'll be future opportunities where if there's ever questions, we can dive into the process more. we can set up special events maybe where we have folks come out to the distillery sometime. I mean, there's endless opportunities of neat stuff we can do. So
There really is.
we'll discuss and we'll make some fun things happen where we can all interact with each other on a more personable level.
Agreed. That's the whole goal here, is to bring bourbon, real world bourbon, to the masses in Web3. So thanks, Tim, for your time, man. I really appreciate it. You don't have to run, but I'm going to end the broadcast now. Okay, you can stay put, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Go ahead.
One thing I just want to ask a quick question. I just started laughing in my head. Before y'all saw me, I was wondering, like, how many of y'all were expecting like a big, hairy, 400-pound guy missing half his teeth? I'm just curious, like the normal depiction of like a distiller.
No, I think
People
that's
probably thinking like he doesn't. He's not a distiller.
I think you're the only person that thinks that about other distillers. Maybe you surround yourself with other distillers, right? You're on the board, right, for the Texas Whiskey Trail. So
Correct.
you probably know a ton of people. So I don't see the distillers that way, but maybe you have more experience with distillers than I do.
No. Typically, majority that I've seen are not like that. Only a small handful, but I feel like the image in a lot of people's heads is just like some big old guy with a gray beard, just got his bottle of Shine.
Yeah, with his leathers on. No, I'm kidding.
Ass cheeks
No.
hanging out.
Right. No, that's not how I think it. Yeah, Danny said I was expecting a long beard.
Well, I did the Ironman last weekend, so I didn't feel like doing this event where I'm gonna be like running and biking for 6-7 hours plus and have all this like hair on me. So I buzz my head, I buzz my beard. Sometimes it won't be super long, but it'll be a bit longer than this. But
Gotta
I got
get aerodynamic. No. Thanks again, Tim, for joining us, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're gonna have Tim on again here in the near future. As we launch and as we plan these things out, Tim's going to be instrumental and a part of everything we do. So when that comes to the tastings, when that comes to once we've chosen a barrel pick, we're doing the bottling, he's going to be a part of that. Really looking forward to it. And man, just thanks a lot. Appreciate you taking the time and really look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on and appreciate it. Hey, cheers, y'all.
Cheers. Mine's almost gone, but they don't need to hear me anymore.
Hey, no worries.
Bye, guys. Have a good one.